gather here on the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Mississauga, and Haudenosaunee nations, and lands within the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. This wampum agreement still goes on today and calls all of us on the land, regardless of where we come from, to live in peaceful coexistence, a sharing of the resources in the land itself, and a mutual respect for the land in all things we do. If you are joining us from Hamilton, Cambridge, Guelph, St. Catharines, Waterloo, or Woodstock, you are within the boundaries of the Between the Lakes Treaty of 1792. Today, we are gathering to launch Black History Month in Hamilton. As we gather to recognize and honor our own history in this space, we want to take a moment to recognize and honor Indigenous history on this land. We hold our Six Nations neighbors in our hearts as they search for missing souls in the land surrounding the former Mohawk Institute. Children from across 20 First Nations communities, totaling some 15,000 children, were held in that institute. We hold all Indigenous peoples in our hearts as communities across Canada see our true history. And as truth unveils itself, we support the calls for justice through criminal investigations of Canada's residential school system. We share in the same shadows of abduction and abuse in our own history. And still, we rise. The strength of our ancestors coursing through our veins. We gather today to connect. COVID may keep us from gathering in person, but distance has never stopped us from connecting in the past. We created the Underground Railroad. We traversed across the continent in the dark of night, in silence following the North Star. We sang spirituals filled with clues and codes to warn each other of dangers and send key messages from a distance. We bravely journeyed solo to new lands in search of new opportunities. Once settled, we set up power bases and sent for our loved ones. Today, we gather to celebrate our long and incredible history in Canada. Today, we gather to celebrate our brand new history in Canada and bring stories from where we come from, adding to Canada's beauty and brilliance. Today, we rise to begin a month of celebration and reflection. We come from varied histories, yet we always come together to celebrate Black history.
Welcome to the launch of Black History Month in Hamilton. Over the years, our council has held the privilege of launching Black History Month here in Hamilton, where we showcase the rich cultural heritage of our Black community. The launch is always followed by the anticipated Reverend John C. Holland Awards, a key program of the Hamilton Black History Council. We've heard from you how impactful it would be to return to a version of an in-person event where we celebrate the achievements of our youth and community leaders. And so, we have made the decision to move this year's event to June 18th, 2022, in hopes that we are able to gather together again in person.
We want to thank you for taking the time out to be with us today. We acknowledge that this is yet another online event and many of us are at our limits. We pause to recognize the impact of the pandemic on our own health and well-being and hope that our time together brings you a sense of community and love.
It is our pleasure to introduce to you today Daniel Coleman, co-director of McMaster Center for Community Engagement Narrative Arts. Daniel will share with you the center's role in supporting the amazing work we're about to unveil today.
Thanks for your warm words of welcome. My name is Daniel Coleman, and I'm here today on behalf of SENA and with my friend and colleague who can't be with us today, Lorraine York, to celebrate this launch of the Black History Database here in Hamilton, Ontario. I'm so pleased that we can be here to share this special day with all of you. SENA stands for McMaster's Center for Community Engaged Narrative Arts, and we partner with community organizations so that they can tell their stories in their own ways. We believe that communities are made of the stories that are told by their members, and that stories make communities in that sense. So we're delighted to be able to participate with the Hamilton Black History Council and with ACA, the Afro-Canadian Caribbean Association of Hamilton, in launching this Black History Database today. We are delighted that this one-stop shop online portal can give people ready and access to the histories that are scattered about our city, that are predominant in the city, and that feature the contributions of Black Hamiltonians right from the inception of the city, when Paoli Brown was the city's first town crier and newspaper, you could say. There are so many roles that Black people have played in the history of Hamilton, and these things should be featured and prominent in our knowledge of the place where we live. We were delighted at SENA to be able to provide a summer research assistantship to the gifted artist and web designer Aaron Perry, so that he could design the look and platform for the website, which is housed at the Hamilton Black History Council site. And we're really grateful to Terry Bedminster, Corey Grant from the Hamilton Black History Council, and to Evelyn Myrie from ACA for the chance to work together on developing this important initiative so that people in the future can know what foundations have been laid and to build for a future in which Black Hamiltonians can thrive long into the future. Thank you for our part, that we had a chance to play this part in this initiative, and we're delighted to see it going forward in the days to come.
Aaron Perry is a recent McMaster University graduate. In the summer of 2021, he worked as a student researcher with SENA, and it was through this beautiful relationship that he led the research for and development of this one-stop shop Black History Database. Aaron's skill and commitment to this project have made this resource something we should all be proud of. Let's hear from him as he walks us through a brief overview of this site, which will be made available to all of you on February 21st, 2022.
Hi everyone, I'm Aaron, and I was the researcher and designer of the Hamilton Black History Database. So a little bit about the project. When I came on last summer, it was a joint venture between HBHC, ACA, and SENA, and they wanted to create a one-stop shop for Black history in Hamilton. We don't have a lot of resources that kind of cohesively and collectively tell the stories of Black communities in Hamilton. One of the main things that we do have is The Journey from Tollgate to Parkway by Adrienne Shad, an amazing book. I suggest all of you check it out or read it. And so a lot of the inspiration from that project and a lot of research of it came from that. So essentially, I was tasked with doing a lot of research to collect all of the resources on Black history in Hamilton, whether that be personal testimonies, videos, books, music, whatever it is, and make it as accessible as possible in kind of a one-stop shop. And we weren't actually able to go in person for a lot of things due to COVID restrictions, but that opened up the possibility of creating an online virtual database that actually allowed all of the information to be as accessible as possible, since the internet actually allows us to make a lot of these materials accessible for a lot of people in our communities, like students and youth, educators, as well as seniors. And so I set to work on that. I did a lot of my research on collecting these materials, and then I created the database, and you can see it right here. So it is the Hamilton Black History Database, located on the Hamilton Black History Council website. And as you see, it says, "Welcome to the Hamilton Black History Database, dedicated to making information, resources, and archive materials pertaining to local history, local Black history, more accessible to our communities." And that's what we are setting out to do, because we want this information to be as accessible as possible. We want our kids to be able to actually learn about our history, because it's so important to us to pass on these lessons and this knowledge to the next generation to carry forward. And to make it as accessible as possible, it's organized in 4 different formats. So we have period-specific Black history, where it's kind of organized chronologically in order of 5 different periods in Hamilton Black history. And these periods are actually inspiration for the programming that you'll be provided with today. So that's very exciting. And the next one is prominent topics in Black history. So this kind of splits it up into different realms, such as education, sports, health and medicine, the arts, and such like that. And we also have finding Hamilton resources by media, so kind of splitting it up by the different things like archives, videos, PDFs, books, things like that. And the last one is the master list, and this one is a huge list that's many pages long of all of the resources in order. And so to just give you a little other perspective on the site, we also have a search bar here where you can type anything in. Say you wanted to type in John C. Holland, and these are the results that pop up. So you can actually go on there and find where these resources are on the site. And to click on one of these, I'll show you what the site looks like. So here's the site right here, and anything in bold, you can actually click on those links. It'll take you to that page. Anything that's not bolded, unfortunately, won't take you there, but you might be able to find it in person in archives. And the last feature that I added on the site to make it as possible for growth as we can is the ability to actually let you submit a resource or request a resource revision or removal. And that's what these Google Docs kind of look like, and they're going to be there, or Google Forms, and they're going to be up there forever, so that you can actually add or edit whatever you want. And it makes it very in the hands of the community, because obviously I, Sana, HBHC, and ACA came together to actually do this, but this resource is meant to go on forever, and we want it to continue growing, and we want it to be actually emphasizing the voices within our community. And no better way to do that than actually allowing our community to have a hand in what's being put on the site. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm also very excited about the programming today. Thank you for letting me speak to this, and I can't wait for you to see what we have prepared for you.
Let's take a walk together, a walk through time. Our history, the history of Hamilton's Black community, is a collection of journeys woven together through time to create a rich tapestry of experience. Today, we will begin our walk from the 1600s and journey with a few community members and organizations who will share how their experiences and work have been shaped by key historical periods.
Welcome to the Griffin House. We begin our walk through time with the earliest instances of Black presence in Hamilton, then known as the Head of the Lake, involving both Black enslavement and settlement between the early 1600s up to 1833. During this period, the earliest records of Black Hamiltonians are overarchingly present within documents and testimonies of those holding them in enslavement. However, while we lack records of these populations, it is likely that there were numerous free Black Hamiltonians living in the city during these times who were able to purchase their own freeborn or were freeborn. The majority of these early Black communities immigrated north from the United States and settled in Hamilton, one of the major Black settlements in the southern Ontario close to the US-Canadian border. It is important for us to recognize the long-standing presence of our communities and the fact that our history is confirmed to hold a legacy of nearly 400 years in these areas. It is a gift for us to be able to live on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, a gift that our ancestors have appreciated for generations. Blackness is not new to Hamilton. Our community's cultures and stories ingrained in the very foundations of this city.
I give thanks to the Lord for our presence here today at Stewart Memorial Church. My name is Evelyn Ockenvold, and I'm the resident historian at Stewart Memorial Church. The prevailing history of Black people is available at Hamilton Library. You can look up the books and see pictorial evidence of us living and working in this area. And Black people have left their mark in every corner of this community where they have settled, clearing lands, improving soil, enrollment in local garrisons to help protect the country against invasion, and raising up great leaders. I name Matthew DaCosta, Elijah McCoy, Nathaniel Dett, just to name a few. And the Lord placed us in this rock, Stewart Memorial Church, that we've clung to for sanctity and sanctuary and sanity, and we sit upon it today to record and memorialize what God has done. Thank you.
Our next period begins with the abolition of Black enslavement in Canada and in Hamilton specifically. Following the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833, Black communities in Hamilton began developing rich lives as free people. The freedom legally granted Black Canadians to lead the development of the Underground Railroad, a system of abolitionist routes and destinations organized across North America to enable enslaved African Americans to gain their freedom in Canada. As a growing site of Black social and economic success, and due to the proximity of the border, Hamilton became one of the prime destinations for the Underground Railroad, specifically Stewart Memorial. With newfound freedom, the ever-growing Black communities in Hamilton began occupying a variety of professions and developing numerous businesses across the city. Hamilton serves as the birthplace of Black surgeons like Dr. Charles Victor Roman, letter carriers like George Morton Jr., toll keepers like Julia Washington Berry, and business owners like John Henry Hill, a freed African American who traveled to Hamilton by way of the Underground Railroad. But the most popular profession of Black men at the time were barbers. In 1861, the #1 skilled occupation of Black men was barbers, and the 15 Black barbers in Hamilton at the time took up 10% of all employed Black men.
Hi, my name is Curtis Bell. I am the grandson of Gertrude Holland, who was the first cousins with Reverend John Holland. On my other side, my family name was Harrison, and Robert Harrison, who was actually the caretaker at Stewart Memorial Church here for decades, married Edith Lewis, who was a first cousin with Norman Pinky Lewis, and cousins with Ray Lewis as well. So this web kind of ties me together with a lot of families, and I had a lot of elders around the kitchen table and barbecues and Christmas Day and whatnot that taught me a lot about my historical lineage. Speaking of the 1900s, that would have been around the time that Black folks came down the escarpment from Africville up where it is now Concession. And at the time it was illegal for Negroes and Jewish people to acquire housing in certain areas in Hamilton, because Hamilton was very segregated at the time. So my family bought a house on Victoria Ave, which was a designated area for Negroes, north of Cannon, and that would stretch from Victoria to Hess Street. One thing that all the men that in my family had in common, from Lincoln Alexander's father to my grandfather Robbie Robb to Ray Lewis and Norman Pinky Lewis, is what they were all porters at the time. That was one of the only jobs that a Black man could aspire to be. It was a very humiliating job. They were subject to mistreatment by a lot of people, and they even had a happy hour where they were told to tap dance for their patrons. Another thing that they all had in common was they all got married and were christened and had their funerals at Stewart Memorial Church, which was the hub. And one great recollection my father has in that time period was celebrating Emancipation Day. It was a great picnic for Black folks at the time, and they would end up at Crystal Beach, and that's where they would celebrate.
Hi, my name is Faith Ogunkoya, and I am the inaugural manager at McMaster's first Black Student Success Center. A huge thanks to the Hamilton Black History Council, ACA, CCENA, and Erin Perry for the work that they have done to develop this long-awaited resource. At the Black Student Success Center, we strive to empower Black students to pursue their academic, personal, and professional goals while affirming their culturally unique identities. Supporting and championing the holistic well-being of our students is critical to our work. And as such, this resource, we're very excited, will be instrumental in supporting that work. We are very much looking forward to working with all of you and supporting the sustainability of this great resource.
Hello, I'm Lyndon George, the Executive Director of HARC, Hamilton's Anti-Racism Resource Center. We provide referral and support services for individuals encountering racism and anti-Black racism in our community. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Hamilton Black History Council for the incredible work they do each and every year recognizing Black excellence. James Baldwin once said, "If you know whence you came, there's no limit to where you can go." This Black History Month, it's an honor to celebrate that occasion with you and think boldly about what comes next. Thank you.
solidifying our communities from the 1900s to the 1940s. This period also saw the emergence of Black community networks focused on encouraging the upward movement of Black individuals in the city. Civil rights activists, the Prince Hall Freemasons, and the Stewart Memorial community begin developing community programming to support Black Hamiltonians, grappling with racial discrimination while trying to access equal education, job opportunities, housing, and improved treatment at work. The Reverend John C. Holland begins much of his work within Stewart Memorial Church right here and within Hamilton's Black community at large, leading campaigns against anti-Blackness in the workplace and social settings of the city. This is a time of community network development, but also a momentous time for Black Hamiltonians excelling in specific fields. Ray Lewis becomes the first Black Canadian to earn an Olympic medal for his sprinting. The Washington Jazz Band thrills audiences with their music. The First and Second World Wars both took place during the beginning of the 20th century, seeing many of those from Hamilton's Black community participating in the war efforts at home and overseas.
My parents were part of that wave of Caribbean immigrants that came to Canada in the early 60s. They came here looking for a better opportunity for themselves and for their families. They were willing to work exceptionally hard. They weren't looking for anything for free or any type of handout. They just wanted an opportunity to be able to make a meaningful contribution to Canadian society. My dad, with 3 business partners, started Caravana Groceries, which was the first West Indian grocery store or West Indian supermarket in Hamilton that catered to the needs of those from the Caribbean community that couldn't find traditional Caribbean foods at the mainstream stores. If you were from Jamaica and you wanted ackee and saltfish, you could find it at Caravana Grocery. If you were from Guyana and you were looking for casrip to make pepper pot, you could find it from Caravana Grocery. Ground provisions, fresh fish, newspapers from the islands were items that he brought in order to fulfill the need from people who originated from the Caribbean. Growing up as an only child working in my dad's business, I had great experience and great exposure to entrepreneurship, and I learned many valuable lessons that I take with me today in my own entrepreneurial journey.
Breaking Down Barriers, 1950s to 1990s. The Reverend John C. Holland Awards Gala is established in 1996. The latter half of the century serves as a whirlwind of social, economic, political, and educational movement for Black communities in Hamilton. Huge numbers of Caribbean and African families immigrate to Canada, settling in Hamilton and increasing the cultural diversity of local Black communities. Many of those entering the city follow in the legacy of community support and activism by developing organizations and programs to tackle specific issues facing Black youth, families, and seniors in Hamilton. ACCA was established in 1979 to unite Hamilton's diverse Afrocentric communities with cultural retention and celebration. Many Hamiltonians from longstanding Hamilton lineages and newcomer families make great strides in Black Canadian representation. This is most heartily seen in the world of education, politics, and the arts. Activists and educators Neville Nunes and Eleanor Wiltshire Rodney advocate for greater supports for Black students and the integration of Black history into school curriculum. The Honorable Lincoln M. Alexander becomes the first Black Canadian Member of Parliament, Cabinet Minister, and Lieutenant Governor throughout his political career. Jackie Washington reaches international prominence for his folk music career. And then there's Doreen Johnson, who was the first Black woman to run for City Council in Hamilton. Let's hear from the Afro-Canadian Caribbean Association.
The Afro-Canadian Caribbean Association is one of Hamilton's longest-serving Black organizations in the community. It was established in 1979 when the wave of new immigrants from the Caribbean arrived in Hamilton. They felt the white gaze and wanted to create a space for themselves where they could support each other, where they can inculcate a sense of belonging, and where they can drive change from where they are. They found this environment, the new environment, very challenging. Oftentimes they faced discrimination and they had no place to go. So the Afro-Canadian Caribbean Association was a brainchild of Colin Hall, a long-standing member of the community. They wanted to build a community that brought together people of African descent to unite and to be part of the community. They found refuge also and solace, I should say, at Stewart Memorial Church, one of the historic sites in Hamilton. And at that church, they provided support to the organization. That's where meetings were held. And in fact, the first president of the Afro-Canadian Caribbean Association was a member or the pastor at Stewart Memorial Church, Reverend Foster. So the church also became a very central part in supporting the Black community. ACA then was formed and became a place where Canadians of African descent could gather, could organize, and they would celebrate their rich culture and heritage. There was a strong focus on the Caribbean community, and their main goal was really around cultural retention. And in fact, we could say they were the de facto settlement agency for Hamilton Black community, one of the first settlement agencies for the Black community in Hamilton, the immigrant Black community in Hamilton. So we're pleased today that the ACCA is moving forward. We have programs now for I would say from the cradle to the grave for young people as well as for seniors, and we support them in many ways through cultural programs as well as educational programs. And we are excited to be a part of Hamilton's community, to be a place of safety, a place of refuge, a place where we can organize. And we want to pay tribute, in this assessment to the people who came before us, who had a vision, who raised funds to acquire property. And property, we know, is important because it really helps center one's community and will inculcate again a sense of belonging. So we are so pleased that the ACCA is around to continue the legacy of building strong, resilient, and empowered Black community.
I just want to begin by stating what an incredible honor it is to join this amazing project to uplift the Black experience here in the African Canadian diaspora right here in Hamilton, Ontario. Year after year, we come together to recognize the legacy of people who have gone before us, and this year is no different, albeit we are doing so virtually. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible volunteers who've come together to contribute to this project, to acknowledge that in a time of such darkness, focusing on the excellence of the African Canadian diaspora is a little bit of that good medicine that I think we all need. And as the proudly elected Member of Parliament representing Hamilton Centre, I would share with you that a lot of our concentration on political engagement, particularly when I was growing up, from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, was around people who had successfully become elected. We obviously think about the barriers that were broken by the Honorable Lincoln Alexander, but what we sometimes miss is the incredible courage, particularly by our Black women, who put their name on a ballot. And I think of Auntie Evelyn Myrie, who ran in Ward 1, Doreen Johnson in 2. I think about Sandy Bell, who put her name on for school board trustee, and of course, Noreen Virgin. It is incumbent on all of us to recognize those trailblazers who took those small steps forward so that people in my generation could take the next steps beyond. And for that, in my contribution to this small segment on political engagement, I want to remind people that there are elections coming up. Find candidates who share your values, who represent your experiences. And if you can't find one, I'm going to put it to you that you have an opportunity for yourself to become that candidate and to be that voice on the table, recognizing the beautiful plurality and the incredible values that we share as a diaspora. With that, I'd like to say this is going to be another incredible Black History Month. We don't have to look too far back to see where the excellence is, and for all the people involved in this program, again, I say thank you.
Recent years, 2000 to present. With the start of a new century, our communities began to engage in numerous social movements to protect, support, and encourage the growth of Blackness in Hamilton. We continue the legacy of those that came before us in retaining our cultural heritage and preserving local Black history in Hamilton. We can easily see this in the virtual Black History database that has been created for that very reason. With the enduring forces of anti-Blackness in our communities and across the country, youth and grassroots groups engage in community organizing and activism that focuses on tackling systemic issues harming our communities and developing new systems that truly look after our communities in the realms of policing, healthcare, education, etc. While intersectional Black identities such as Black, queer, and disabled people have existed in our communities since time immemorial, we are beginning to take greater agency over the interest of those within our communities that face certain obstacles that may not fit within pre-existing notions of the Black experience. We are beginning to finally take care of all of our people.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I'm the Executive Director of the Disability Justice Network of Ontario. It's a youth-led organization led by Black and racialized disabled people in our community who are focused on challenging systems to build a world where disabled people are free to be. So we work with our communities to run campaigns that focus on challenging our systems. So we were able to successfully push for sidewalk snow clearing after 3 years of campaigning, which will be in place in the fall of 2022, and we've been able to push for assistive devices reforms. We've built an assistive devices library where people can lend and loan out equipment for people with disabilities like wheelchairs, walkers. We picked Hamilton as our home for this organization because Hamilton has the largest density of disabled people in the province, but there's very little representation by disabled people who are racialized and Black.
As we move on from here on now, after a pandemic that has also affected our communities and continues to provide certain challenges, the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion is committed to eradicating, addressing systemic racism, anti-Blackness, Islamophobia, anti-Indigenous racism. And we will continue to work with young people, young grassroots organizations such as the Hamilton Students for Justice, the Disability Justice Network for Ontario, Defund HPS, and other organizations that might come up to serve the needs of Black and young people in our city. We continue to address hate in Hamilton, we're working with Dr. Emil Joseph, the Hamilton Anti-Racism Resource Center, to establish an online platform that allows for people to report hate so that we, the community, can address these issues. The final commitment that we make, that we continue to make, is trying to instill a culture of inclusive city building, one that allows for participation, one that provides the foundation for community engagement, civic leadership, a culture of listening to people, and serving the needs of the most vulnerable. As Reverend John C. Holland showed us, and that's why we celebrate his legacy. Service of others is important. Service to the community is important in addressing the many challenges that we face. So as we look forward to a new future here in Hamilton as it pertains to our Black communities, we are committed to these things, and we continue to stand on the shoulders of those that came before us and continue to do this work in the spirit of serving others. Congratulations. I hope you enjoy the virtual database and we can all learn together.
My name is Leo Nupolu Johnson. I am the founder and executive director of Empowerment Squared. As an organization, we have focused on building because many times we've gone up against racial injustice, systemic discrimination, and different forms of injustices, especially within the Black community. But whenever we overcome these barriers, we are often not able to take advantage of the opportunities that do emerge. That is the reason why Empowerment Square is focused on the building side, ensuring that we are improving learning outcomes for Black and racialized youth, so that whenever we overcome barriers and opportunities do emerge, our young people are able to access those opportunities. They are empowered to ensure that those opportunities will be leveraged for the growth and development of our community. Today, we are also grateful as an organization that we can go around the world to share this incredible gift, this incredible opportunity that we often take for granted in Canada. I am pleased that we can now go to a country like Liberia in West Africa, where we are building the first ever public library and learning center in the country for the last 175 years. A $2 million project that is already inspiring thousands of young people. In the end, what we already have, we have a responsibility to distribute with the world while we continue to work on the challenges that we are faced with. I want to say, looking back, almost 15 years later, there isn't a greater gift I could have asked for than being part of an organization that can help create capacity within our community, support other organizations, and also support individuals in our community when it comes to breaking the cycle of poverty, but ensuring that the Black community can take its rightful place within the narrative of Canadian history, but also within forging of what the future would look like. Thank you, everybody. It's been an incredible opportunity at Empowerment Square.
We are the future. We are Black history.
We cannot truly finish our walk through time without considering where our communities will tread in the future. Our history and the futures are both important to us, our ancestors and our descendants. We often make a note to remember and honor our ancestors, but how often do we consider our roles as future ancestors? This city, this world, is not only ours. One day, it will be the gift that we will give to our future communities. First and foremost, it is important for us to recognize our past. As Black individuals, it is important for us to educate ourselves on our history and acknowledge those who have gone before us. As Black youth, my hope for the future is for us to ensure that we take up space in storefronts as business owners, in educational institutions as students and as teachers, and in the working field in trades and other spaces.
I hope that we can be in spaces where we can make an impact and influence change, whether that be in healthcare, law, politics, or as community builders. Personally, for me, the future of the Black community is seeing more Black individuals in spaces that I never saw them as I was growing up.
Hello, Hamilton. I want to thank the Hamilton Black History Council and the African Canadian Caribbean Association for inviting me to speak today. I'm Ainara Aline from Ainara's Bookshelf. My Bookstagram account where I share diverse books that feature characters that are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, written by authors that are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. My mission is to normalize diversity in the media through books, while also encouraging a love of reading for kids. I believe that by experiencing other cultures and perspectives through books, we can not only acknowledge our differences, but be able to understand and embrace them. I've been asked to talk about how I see the future of Black History Month, the Black community, and my own future. I'm a fantasy sci-fi reader, so it's easy for my mind to go to super Afrofuturistic stuff like Wakanda, or a Wakanda Canada, like Wakanada even. See what I did there? With Matthew Green as Prime Minister, but I'll stick to reality for this. I hope the future of Black History Month and the Black community in Hamilton, everywhere really, is that of unburdened energy. What I mean by that is Black History Month would be more of an unbridled celebration. There are only so many hours in a day, days in a month, and only so much energy we as a community have. Having to defend even the actual concept of a Black History Month, while balancing the stories of positive history and the lessons of trauma and pain, takes a toll, a lot of time and energy. We enter the month burdened with the issues that face our community, like housing and inequality. So we must celebrate cautiously and even be distracted with the weight of knowing that the fight continues in the months to come. My dream for the future of the month is that the community is in such a place that we can focus our unbridled energy on celebration, education, and Black joy. For me, personally, I want Ainara's Bookshelf to go out of business. I want there to be no need for me to highlight books from the Black community or the other underrepresented cultures. I want these stories to be mainstream and sought after naturally, for society as a whole to have learned the need for them. That everyone has a desire and understanding of why reading books to experience other cultures and points of view is essential for us to live together. I want to then focus on writing my own books and sharing stories about my own personal experiences for everyone to enjoy and value. I have met many young people in the community who understand their responsibility as future ancestors, as well as many adults who encourage and embrace us and our voice. I am here speaking to you today because of these adults. I would say that the future of Black History Month and the Black community is bright. Thank you for having me, and happy Black History Month, this year and in the many years to come.
Yeah. One love, one power. They say the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. Well, the darker the flesh, then the deeper the roots. I got the knowledge, so my mind up out of prison. Born in 1995, but it's like now I started living. I'm on now. I'm just trying to turn up for my city and my dogs now. All my Pac brothers and my sisters, we the dawn now. We winning. Take the power from the system. Equality we preaching, but we don't see the vision that they sought. Let us rock, whips chains, that's the plot. So we fight and got it back. Now a month is all we got. Never fuss, might cuss. Sorry God, that's a must. Wish I was there when Mother Rosa had us sitting on that bus. Quit with the worrying, we with the flourishing. We finna rise about the mashes, get the freedom we've been lacking. Sounds so nourishing, mighty encouraging. We either dribble, shoot a basket, or be rapping. Let me ask you, do you know what Martin Luther King stood for? Or Freddie Douglass? No, we don't want war. From Richard Allen to Toni Morrison, the flame is lit, let's get behind it and together we gon' win. Do you know what Martin Luther King stood for? Or Freddie Douglass? No, we don't want war. From Richard Allen to Toni Morrison, the flame is lit, let's get behind it and together we gon' win. Shout out to Kobe, shout out to Malcolm X, shout out Aretha and Duke Ellington, Robert Abbott, Alvin Ailey, Muhammad Ali, Donovan Bailey, Jesse Jackson, Michael Blackson, Michael Jordan. Rihanna and Beyonce heated up when they recorded. George Washington Carver and Zora Neale Hurston. Nelson Mandela, man, the fight's been working. Shout out to Nat Turner, shout out to Kwame Ture, shout out to us, man. Man, we done came a long way. Shout out to Matt Green, shout out to Sylvia Starr, shout out to Lincoln Alexander and George E. Clark. Quit with the worrying, we with the flourishing. We finna rise about the mashes, get the freedom we've been lacking. Sounds so nourishing, mighty encouraging. We either dribble, shoot a basket, or be rapping. Let me ask you, do you know what Martin Luther King stood for? Or Freddie Douglass? No, we don't want war. From Richard Allen to Toni Morrison, the flame is lit, let's get behind it and together we gon' win.